everybody knows me. I'm Anna Hayes, and I'm your local resident representative of the Guardian Alliance, which is a group of beings that come from other dimensional systems, but also other systems of our third dimension. Some of them are extraterrestrial, some of them are metaterrestrial, and some of them are ultra-terrestrial, which means they're completely outside of the framework of time and space as we know it. It's a large group that I speak for, and I have been a student of this group since childhood. And I'm here this evening to share with you some of the things I have learned, and I'm hoping to give you something that you can take home with you, some information that can help you perhaps to understand a little bit better what your consciousness is about, what the experience of other dimensional beings and your relationship to them is about, and maybe some practical tips on how you can take the knowledge of understanding your bioenergetic system and use it to begin to accelerate the process of your own evolution, both spiritually and biologically. Now, a lot of people think that spiritual evolution and biological evolution are two separate things. I always thought that. And I think differently now because of what I have been taught by the Guardian Alliance. They've introduced me to something called the science of Kilanta. And when I first asked them, what is that? They said, well, it can be simply defined as the science of light, sound, the subconscious symbol codes, and the base codes of matter. I was like, okay, light and sound I understand. These code things, I don't know what this means at all. So I asked questions, and I got many, many answers on all sorts of things I never really wanted answers to. But Kilanta presents a fascinating perspective on the human mind, on the cosmos, on matter, antimatter, and the relationship between all of those things. And I would like to share with you tonight some of the information that I've learned about this science. And hopefully we can grow in our learning together, because I'm a fellow student of the Guardian Alliance, and I have a feeling our species will be learning this for a very long time. So you have to start somewhere, and Kilanta seems to be the place to start. All right, I'm going to use some of my notes to help you and to help me. Basically, first question is, what is Kilanta? Before everybody looks at this, there's people in the group who've had a little bit exposure to this, and I would like to ask, what is Kilanta from the information that the people who've heard about it have got? Who would like to put a little bit into what is Kilanta to your understanding right now? Can you help me?
Yeah.
Yeah, you.
Well, I think it's basically working with the life force energy of the universe. It's also, and consciously working with it, and working with the symbols and codes, okay, that help that soul accretion process that we talked about. And it's done with light, and it's done with sound, and it's done by activating the chakras, okay, using these technologies. And it's not only good to understand this stuff intellectually, but we need to be actualizing and activating it so you can actually experience this stuff firsthand. So it's kind of like, a quick overview of...
Right, that's very good. That touches on many of the bases of Kilanta. Is there anybody else that has read or heard anything about Kilanta that would like to put anything in on that?
I know that, I'm sorry.
Yes, I would, but I can't read the second. Okay. Till I settle myself down.
Are you going to talk? I was going to say that in my understanding of Kilanta, wherein we can use light, color, and anything that is electrified, may help heal people in the future. As though we have seen some experiments of, say, Dr. Robert Becker on growing limbs, which he was successful on frogs after he cut the limb, and the limbs grew, provided the electrical potential of the limb is changed from a positive to zero to negative, and that causes the frog limb to grow into a normal size, just like the salamander. I believe that in the future, our Kilanta, my understanding of Kilanta, will be in the same line And being in the field of medicine, we are going to be very interested in that, especially in trauma surgery. Yeah, and orthopedics, you know.
Yes, Kilanta has many, many healing applications. In fact, it has applications across the board to everything that affects our universe and our society and our personhood. Because the real core of Kilanta is it's the science of consciousness and the science of creation. It's the underlying structures of what matter is created from. It is the underlying structures of consciousness. So it is not something you can learn in one night, by the way. But there are some other things that Kilanta also is. And I prepared this for both of us, so I can go down the list for myself, and also you can read along if you like.
Show it.
It is, I have to hold it up higher?
That's good. That's good.
Okay. It is the science of creation and consciousness. It's the science of macrocosmic and microcosmic interrelationships. It's the science of energy dynamics through which matter forms and consciousness manifests. It's the science of biological, physical, and consciousness spiritual evolution. That's not all. It is the science of humanity's relationship to its source and the cosmos. It is the science of the construction, perceptions, and potentials of the human organism and consciousness. It is the science of the structure of the multidimensional universe and humanity's multidimensional identity and humanity's relationship to other sentient life forms within the multidimensional universe. Kilanta is all these things, and it's more. It is the science of the human soul and the family tree of consciousness out of which all of us emerge, which is something not too many scientists know here. That sounds like something that would be found more so in the realms of religions or churches. But in truth, there is not a difference between science and religion. We only perceive it to be here. Science does have a soul, but it hasn't found yet. And Kilanta is the place where it can begin to find that soul. Okay. It is the science of DNA activation, genetic imprinting, cellular memory, and transmutation of form. Through understanding the dynamics of Kilanta, we can literally change the way our DNA operates. And the DNA governs the structure of our physical body. And our physical body will determine what type of consciousness we are able to bring into our minds, our conscious minds, while we're here. There's an intimate connection between spirit, your spiritual aspects, which are your higher dimensional aspects, and consciousness moving through the body. Because you can have a wonderful level of development of consciousness in the higher dimensions, but if you have a neurological structure that is not able to handle the current of all that electrical information, you won't have access to it on a conscious level. So the science of Kilanta gives us tools and understanding of our parts enough that we can start to expand the potentials of our body, so we can bring in more of our consciousness and awareness, so we can bring in more of our soul into manifestation here. Kilanta is the science of dimensional ascension, teleportation, bilocation, and regeneration of identity. For once you understand how to play with these little particles that you're composed of, these units of consciousness that Kilanta will teach you about, things like teleportation will come easily to you. You won't need a machine to do it, because you'll know how to change the vibrational rate of your molecular structure. Do I know how to do this yet? No. But I'm first in line as far as wanting to learn. And we're getting the foundations of what one day, if we work with these tools, will teach us how to do these things. There are extraterrestrial races that are in biologies. They're not just metaterrestrials that don't have bodies anymore. They are in bodies who know this science and who are able to manifest and demanifest at will. They are able to walk through solid objects. They are able to travel through time with no problem at all. Things that seem only science fiction to us. It's because they understand the principles of kinetic science. Now, little more scientific about the whole thing, Keylontic science explores the dynamics of time, space, and matter. How those qualities of our externalized reality are created. What are they really? Where do they come from? Are they what they appear to be? Some of these questions will be answered through Keylontic science. We will find that time is not linear as we perceive it to be, but simultaneous in nature. We will find that space all takes place in something called non-space. We will find that matter is actually an illusion, holographic illusion created by the refraction of energy particles and light and sound frequencies. We will find things are much deeper than our five senses tell us they are when we begin to explore Keylontic. Okay. It is the science of ultra-micro-particle and antiparticle dynamics. It is the science of the 12 human senses, not just the 5. And basically, it is the science of light, sound, the subconscious symbol codes, and the base codes of matter. And now we'll learn what they are. We know light and we know sound. But what are subconscious symbol codes? And what are base codes of matter? Cover this section in a little while. This gets into what it can do for us, but I think we'll get into that at the end.
Kitty,
Now, the reason that I'm reading these is there is a lot of information. And if I'm just talking to you off the top of my head, I might lose half of it. So I'm going to read it. If you can read it, that's all right, but I don't think you can because it's so tiny. But it's more so, I'm going to read it to you because I won't lose content that way. So if that's a little annoying, bear with me. At least you'll get the information. All right. There are 6 primary elements in the science of Keylontic. The first element are particae. That's a new word. Okay. Particae are the smallest units of energy in the cosmos, according to the Guardian Alliance. They are electrotonal units of energy identity that emanate from a central source. The Guardian Alliance calls the unisign. They operate as minute fission fusion generators. They create and maintain the electromagnetic frequency fields upon which the universe and all structure is built. They exist within and beyond all matter forms, free matter and antimatter, and consciousness. They form and sustain something called morphogenetic fields. For all forms, subparticles, etc., everything has a morphogenetic field. And a morphogenetic field is a basic energy field, energy structure behind its manifest form that allows that manifest form to keep its shape. And everything in the universe, every little particle, subparticle, has one. And particae are what they are. Groups of particae form larger morphogenetic fields like the ones humans would have. But even a particae represents a morphogenetic field itself. So they form, we could look at them, if you wanted to, as little tiny units that are the morphogenetic field, our form-holding pattern that we come out of. And we are composed of particae. Everything is. The space in the air here is composed of particae. Our bodies are. Our higher consciousnesses. Particae are the unified energy field that runs through the entire cosmos. Okay, let's go back to here. Okay. Particae are units of electrotonal consciousness. They are the organizational intelligence within all things. In spiritual terms, they are the living units of conscious identity and energy, particles of the consciousness of the unisign, which some people call God. We are made of these things. People think God is somewhere out there, someplace away from us. We are made of the substance of which that being is. These particae are not just energy units, they're energy identity units. They are conscious, and they have consciousness. They will group to form different types of consciousness and awareness. They don't think in terms like we do, but we think because we are composed of them. So in spiritual terms, the particae are our direct connection and continual connection to a centralized source that we may call God if we're comfortable with that. And if not, the unisign works. It's an energy identity. It is a central source of creation. And we take place within it. It's not out there somewhere. All of reality is taking place within it. And this is one of the things you'll learn in Kilanta. You will learn the scientific parts of it, which a lot of spiritual people go, oh, that's not important. And then you'll learn the spiritual parts of it that a lot of scientific people say, oh, that can't be because spirit's not real. Hopefully through Keylontic science, we can learn that yes, spirituality and our spiritual identity is as real as the identity of our leg or our arm. They are the same substance. They're composed of the same particles. And those particles are particae. Okay, now there are two types of subparticles that are formed from the particae. First one we'll call the particum. Okay, it is a particae unit. It's considered a particae. But the particum particae is slower moving, and it contains half of the electrotonal, which is electrified sound, thrust, or force, of its twin. So we have a particum, and the particum has a twin. The particum moves half as fast. It pulsates half as fast as its twin does. Okay. The particae is a subunit. The particum is a subunit of the particae. They make up particles in our universe. They're the little tiny units that make up our subatomic particles, and the smallest known particles that we would have would be composed of particum particae. All right. There is another type of particae that are called particae. The particae are antiparticles to the particles that we are composed of. This implies the existence of a parallel universe, a parallel self. Any form here is a particum form, and it will have its twin reflection that moves twice as fast, vibrates twice as fast in a parallel dimensional system, parallel universal system. We have 15 dimensions in our system, and so does the parallel universe. And it's not like they're way over there someplace in another universe far, far away. These two universes are intimately intertwined. They are taking place in the same space, but on different pulses of consciousness. So we perceive one set of pulses here, and we don't see their set, and vice versa. Okay? Now, let's see. Particae cycle. Okay? The Guardians call this cycling. The particae unit is a unit of electrotonal thrust that comes out of the unison. It gets projected into the 15-dimensional system. Okay? When it intersects with the 15-dimensional system, it undergoes fission, and it breaks apart and replicates itself. So it starts out as one, undergoes fission when it hits the frequency bands of the 15-dimensional system, and then it replicates itself, and the original breaks apart. Okay? So now, the original pattern of that tone remains in the replication, so it's never gone. Okay? The one that broke up first, the replica holds the original pattern. The one that came in first breaks up into two pieces, a particum and a particae. They are created at the same time. Okay? They flash on in one in our universe and one in the parallel universe. And our particles were made of an infinite number of them compose our bodies. But this is what they are doing so fast that we can't perceive it. So they break up into the particae and the particum. They manifest into the dimensional fields. And then because this one, the particae, has twice the amount of thrust, of force, and it's moving away from the morphogenetic field, just like this one is, it starts to tow the particum. It makes it spin, reverse direction, and go back to fuse with the morphogenetic field. So the particum particle here flashes off in our universe, and it goes back into the morphogenetic field. It expands the morphogenetic field, adding to it. Then this becomes more of a thrust than what the particae is. So it pulls the particae, makes it spin, pulls the particae antiparticle back in, and it fuses with the particum particle inside of the morphogenetic field. Now both our particle and our antiparticle have flashed off. We have disappeared momentarily. Then this act, as they fuse, it creates, as we know, when something fuses, it releases a burst of energy. It sends a quarter of its thrust back toward the unison, creating something called a backflow, which is a current that pulls away from the dimensional matrix that we're in. Okay? This would be the current that would take us back home to God, if you want to look at it that way. When it creates the backflow, that sets off another act of fission within the morphogenetic field. And again, the ones that have come together will start to cycle again, and they'll do this again, and they'll break apart again. So they're constantly flashing on together, then the particle flashes off, the antiparticle flashes off, they replicate, create a backflow, then flash on again. And this is happening so fast. I believe the particles, what did we come to? It was 3/100ths of a second in the third dimensional particles. And some of them are much, much faster than that in the higher dimensional frequencies. So we are composed of these structures. Most of us have no idea we're composed of these structures, and most of us don't know that we flash on and off. Where do we get one between these flashes? Was my first question. If I'm flashing on and off, it's happening, too fast for my senses to see. Where am I going? When I demanifest, am I just gone or what? No, we return to our original pattern, the morphogenetic field out of which we came, our original identity that has all of our parts in it and all possible versions of our parts. In the 15-dimensional matrix, which I'm not going to go into too heavily this time, or I'll never get to the end of what I want to get into, but the morphogenetic field for the particles that make up, say, our bodies, these are D1 particles, first-dimensional particles, they would have their morphogenetic field in D15, are what we call our emotional bodies, or it's actually the elemental body, the complex elements that form the matter in our bodies that help to form it. That is our second-dimensional aspect of particle, or particum in our universe. The morphogenetic field for that is in D14. So there's a correlation between the levels of our particle here and where our morphogenetic field is in the higher dimensions. And we'll get into that in another one. But it's enough to know that we're made of these things that most people don't even know exist yet. And they hold the key to our consciousness and to our perception of matter, space, and time. Okay.
Good.
The second primary element of Keylontic science is a particle grid. And this brings it a little bit home, brings it down to where we can understand it a little bit more. It's something that we have, and it's a grid, okay? A particle grid is composed of particle units. In our system, is a particum grid. It's made up of particum particles. In the parallel universe, it's a particle grid. But what a particle grid, whichever side it's on, is, it's a grouping of particle. Particle group by like polarization. That means particums will group together and particle will group together to form more complex structures. The first thing they'll form are strands. They form strands of electrotonal energy units. Those strands group to form grids. If you take strands and cross them this way, this way, and this way, you get what looks like a little carpet of light that's made of little fibers of light. And that is the unified field of energy that exists within everything and through everything and connects us directly into our source, of which we emerge. It connects us right to the unify, connects us to each other. Okay, so a particle grid is simply, you can look at it as a carpet of light and sound. It's invisible to our perceptions, but it exists beneath all matter forms and all forms of consciousness. Okay, let's see. Okay. Here we have the cosmos represents a massive particle grid, which serves as the unified field of energy substance within which all things exist and are interconnected. All beings and matter forms have personal particle grids, which are formed within the grid of the unified field. Energy and identity perpetually circulate from the unici into the dimensional systems and back again through the electromagnetic fabric of the particle grids. They are electromagnetic fields that are created by the cycling of particle that are the first level of our individuation of form. You could look at it that way too. Even though there is a unified field of them, when they start to build up and group into more complex structures, that's the first level of the creation of a human body or any other body or a matter object. So we have a particle grid. Now, each human and object in our system has a particle grid composed of particum units. And it also has a particle grid in our parallel universe, which is the grid of our personal double or twin. So we do have a twin. It is our same body pattern. It's evolving on a similar course of action in a system that moves twice as quickly as us. It pulses twice as fast. They have more consciousness within their bodies than we do because they vibrate faster. And if we can learn to move our consciousness into union with theirs, we expand. And that is the process of evolution. Okay, now, the process of biological and spiritual evolution is the process of progressing from lower dimensional reality fields into the higher fields. This is done by pulling higher frequencies, Partakai grids from the higher dimensions, into our Partakai grid. As we do this, we are progressively merging our Partakai grid with the Partakai grid of our twin. We are literally, as we evolve up the dimensional scale, you have the two separate Partakai grids, okay, the Partakai and the Partakai, we in our double. We are merging up further. And as right now we're in the third dimensional frequencies. We're actually composed of D1, physical body, D2, the emotional elemental body, and D3, mental body, where we have our line of focus. We are united with our double up to that degree. We still have from the fourth dimension to the 15th to unite with our double. And we are literally merging consciousness, but also merging DNA. And we are taking what is taking place in seemingly two separate spaces, two separate pulses, and merging them, which creates another type of pulse. It creates the whole pulse, which takes you completely out of the illusion of matter on both sides into the next level up. And it is hard to describe. You know, they've been teaching me this, the guardians have been teaching me this for a number of years, some of these principles. And it's still hard for me to put into words how this happens, but I feel it. Right? I feel the process taking place. A lot of people have mystical experiences or strange experiences where they know there's someplace else too. Some people, especially people who've dabbled in like psychic development, that kind of stuff, they've run into experiences where they saw themselves and they felt themselves inside this double of theirs, and they couldn't figure out, what is this double? Where does it come from? This is where it comes from. One person who experienced that very consciously was Jane Roberts, who channeled the Seth material. She would look on her wall and she would literally see an image of another space and time, and she would be in a library. Her double would be in the library reading, and she would translate what her double was reading into material to write here, which was a kind of neat little trick. And this is what we can learn to do once first we realize we have this double. And then we realize we're intimately connected to it. We can learn exercises that will help to speed up this evolutionary process and help the merger with the double. Because ultimately, when you merge all of humans can hold 12-dimensional frequencies in the body. After that, you would not be in human form anymore. You would evolve out of biology completely. Okay? But as you're evolving up from the first dimension up to the 15th, you're progressively pulling together with your double. When you get to D12, you basically turn into what would appear as a ball of light. Okay? If we were to see it, it is a ball of electrotonal frequency, and it is consciousness, and it is identity. That is where we started. Before we ever came to this place and found ourselves running around in matter-form bodies, we existed in these states of pure cognition. So it's not as if it's something foreign. Kilanta is not something foreign to us. Our cells know what Kilanta is. Okay? So it's time that our conscious minds became aware of that process. So the third primary element of Kilantic science are Kilans. That's where it gets its name. Okay? Now, a Kilan is a dimensionalized Partakai composite that forms within and around the fabric of the Partakai grids. Okay, once the grids are formed, let's say our Partakai grid of the strands pull together and they finally form a grid. Well, Partakai group by like polarization, those grids are going to pull in more energy. They're going to pull in more Partakai units or Partakai units in ours. These units build up within the grid. As you can almost imagine it like dirt building up in the fabric of a garment or something. If you put it under a microscope, you could see the little pieces of dirt embedding themselves in the grid. Well, Kilans do this. More and more Partakai group together to form clusters. And these clusters become what are called Kilans. Now, Kilans don't just group without a pattern. They group following certain geometrical, mathematical laws that apply to the way that the dimensions are structured in the whole bit. There's a set order to them. They group to form things that if we could see them with a microscope, they would look like little crystals, crystalline structures with a definite form and shape to them. Okay, let's see. Now, chelons are the first step in the transition from consciousness to pre-matter substance. So, before we were matter, on the levels before we're matter, we are pre-matter. Before that, we're something else. Okay? Chelons are the level of our identity and our being that exists between pure consciousness and pre-matter substance. Now, if we're going to see chelons, they look something like this. This is an example of one trying to do a three-dimensional thing two-dimensionally. But they would look like little crystal clusters, like you might, if you would look at a crystalline, like a little crystal cluster that you find in the earth. They have the little points sticking out a little bit. It's kind of like that. They would look like that. And they are composed of millions and billions of particle units in just one little chelon. Okay, and they embed themselves in the grids and they build up on the grids. It's almost like if you were going to build a statue out of paper mache, you would start with an armature, say out of wire. And then on top of the wire you put a layer of paper as your next layer, and you'd slowly build out to more solid form. Well, that is what's happening with energy and particle. All right, so we have our chelons that are building up in the grid. Now, the next level, next primary element of chelonic science are chelon codes. Now, chelon codes are complex groupings of chelons. They direct the contours of energy upon which forms are built. Particle and grids set the base forms in energy. Chelons add more substance to the forms, and chelon codes further flesh out the energy structure upon which particles will manifest. They direct the flow of energy particle units through a form into more specialized patterns. So it's the next level out on fleshing out our form into what appears as a matter form. Okay? They're complex patterns of frequency, electrotonal energy. They form into interwoven geometrical crystalline patterns that are the templates of living light and sound. And they are living because they are conscious. We are conscious because we are composed of chelons and particle. So these are the living light and sound patterns that our subatomic particles build up on. Okay. They are the final step between energy consciousness and pre-matter substance. So they link the chelons into the pre-matter, and that's where matter's solidity or density starts to happen. They set the pattern for the DNA and the body rhythms also. So held within, there are certain DNA, pieces of DNA we can identify as, oh, this controls this body, or this controls that, or this controls the other thing. But what controls the pattern that created that DNA in the first place is the chelon codes and the chelons and the particle beneath them. These are the foundation units of substance. Okay, as we evolve upward into the higher dimensions, we're actually assembling into our particle grids, our personal particle grid that our body and consciousness is built on, more and more complex forms of chelon codes. And the more forms and chelon codes a person's particle grid has, the more consciousness you will be able to bring into that form. All right, right now we're bringing into our form the consciousness of the third dimension out of 15. We got a long way to go. And how we're going to go, whether we do it consciously or let evolution take its course, it's the same process. Evolution taking its course is the process of building more complex. Particle are still coming into our particle grid. Okay, they're still forming. You can either break down chelon codes, which will make you de-evolve, and basically your genetic code would fall apart, or you can evolve. You're going one way or the other because you're either building chelons or you're tearing them down. None of it's static. Okay, so our process of evolution can be made much simpler if we understand that we have these units and that there are things we can do with the energy directed through our minds that can build into our own grids more complex chelon codes, which will allow more of our higher consciousness to come into our bodies And as we progress with this, it will lessen the density of our bodies, because right now we're made of particum mostly. We have more particles than anything else, so we have a matter density to us. It's pretty solid, or it appears to be anyway. Now, the more you bring in your double and fuse with your double, you're changing this particum into particae, into the original pattern. You're lessening the density of your matter form as you go. So this is how dimensional ascension occurs. This is how spiritual evolution and biological evolution occurs. What it means to evolve and to complete our evolutionary process is to evolve our Keelan codes so high, where we have so many complex codes, that we no longer manifest. We vibrate too high as a consciousness to manifest in a lower density matter form. So what we're really aiming for in evolution is coming to the point where we have evolved out of biology and back into the higher states of being that we came from in the first place. All right, and a lot of people don't realize that this is what evolution is about. It's not just, species happen to appear, they happen to go this way, happen to go that way, and there's really no order to it or much of a pattern. There certainly is a pattern. There's a pattern, there's a purpose, and it goes for species all the way down to the individual. Okay? And we can become conscious of this process by starting to understand how the process occurs and starting to work with our own particle grids and learning to plug things in, more energy, more frequency into our grids. Will speed up our evolutionary process and our spiritual evolution. Now, to the fifth primary element of Keelantic science. This one I love. I just like the term. I don't know why. I think it did a lot for me when they gave me this term. It made an instant visual where I could see it. It was a little abstract for me before, but this helped me. The crystal body. Okay, this is the fifth primary element of Keelantic science. This term is used to refer to the multidimensional Keelan code structure of a matter form or form of consciousness or energy. Everything has a crystal body. Every little particle in the universe has a crystal body. Every big being in the universe has a crystal body. We have one, and it walks around with us. It's inside of us. And it's exciting. I have seen this, all right? The Guardians have done things with my perceptions a couple of times where they shifted me to a higher dimensional field, my mental awareness. From there, you can see what your crystal body looks like in Deep 3. You can't see it from here, but when you change the pulsation rate of your consciousness, which you have to separate from your body right now to do because your body can't handle a faster pulsation rate right now. They showed me what it looked like, and it looks like these little tiny crystals made of light. And instead of seeing, like, if you were going to look in a mirror, you wouldn't see yourself this way. We would all look the same, all right? Yet all little geometrical patterns that we are made of are different. And we process consciousness and energy in unique individual ways, but we're composed of the same substance. And we are so beautiful on that level. So the crystal body is something that when I'm introducing Keelantic science, I would much rather teach you about this and teach you that you have one and teach you how to start playing with it and how to start adding more energy to it and becoming aware of it than worrying about some of the real heavy-duty scientific stuff, because this is the personal stuff that you can do something about and you can do something with. So the crystal body does a number of things, okay? Okay. Hold on a second, I want to find my place. All right, it sets the manifest characteristics of a form. So our physical body, our DNA, all of those things are controlled and set by the crystal body. It says the subatomic structure and the body rhythms, the way energy and particle units will move through the body, and the type of conscious awareness the form will be able to embody. The human crystal body encompasses 12 dimensions of identity and form. That means we can ultimately bring into the morphogenetic field of our crystal body 12 dimensions. Excuse me.
Number 4, numerology, I've been doing some research about that. Is that going to be related to the 4 activation, the high vibration of the 4 bands of the DNA in combination
Yes.
with the consciousness that's going to be able to very soon, according to things that I've been studying, activate our consciousness to be able to mutate at a faster speed to be able to implement all these concepts faster into the system, to
Yes,
the biological system.
exactly. What is going to happen with the 12 DNA that you're referring to? We originally, our prototype, our morphogenetic field for our species, had a pattern for 12 strands of DNA, not just 2. All right. At certain points, they were broken down. They became what we call the junk DNA, these little DNA particles that are floating around in our cells. They're being plugged back in. The way they are being plugged back in is by plugging in chelon codes. All right, they're dismantled chelon codes is what they are, and they're being plugged back in, which will reactivate those strands of DNA.
And at the same time, the 12 chakra will be activated, the 7 in the body and the 5 outside the body.
Yeah, I'm not sure what chakra system that you were studying, but we're getting into the chakras a little bit later, where yes, we're activating the higher ones, the ones outside of the body. We're doing that in order to help build the chelon process, but they go hand in hand. If you start working with your chelons or with your DNA, you're automatically affecting the other things. You know, you'll open your chakras if you start playing with the chelons, or if you start meditating on trying to plug in your DNA strands, you will build chelons and activate chakras. So they all go together. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
The most important thing to understand about the crystal body is that by interacting with the crystal body, we can expand our evolutionary potential, re-plug in those DNA that you were talking about, and we can accelerate the whole process of physical evolution, biological evolution, and spiritual evolution. So it's very helpful to know that we have a crystal body, and then we can start taking steps to make changes in this crystal body. The term may seem like very unscientific, and I think that's why I like it. It's simple. We could call it the particle body, we could call it the chelon body, but the crystal body gives you an idea visually of if you want to start meditating to use this, you want to start directing mental energy into making changes. Picture the crystal body, because that's what you're working with. Okay? Now, the last primary element of chelontic science, and I'm talking really primary elements here, okay? This can go much, much further into particles, antiparticles, and all sorts of real scientific jargon things. I'm not going to get into those now. You know, some of them even confuse me. But the last thing, this is our control device on how to play with our crystal body. They're called light symbol codes. All right? A light symbol code is a pattern of electrotonal energy that's composed of specific particle configurations. They make up certain frequencies and spectrums of multidimensional light. Now, if you want to know what a light symbol code is, you can close your eyes and visualize, say, the pattern of a Star of David, which, by the way, is a very powerful chelon code. All right. When you visualize that pattern of light on your inner screen, your inner mental screen, you don't realize it, but you're directing fourth dimensional sound patterns. All right. The mind is a very powerful thing. We forgot that as a race, and we're relearning it in these times. The mind is composed of particle. When you think a thought, you are making a particle pattern, and you are plugging it into other patterns out here. Where does a thought go after you think it? It goes several places. It downscales, it slows in vibration, and it ends up out here someplace in manifest reality. We won't get heavily into that right now. But the most important thing to understand about light symbol codes is they can be used to program the way energy flows through the crystal body, the chelons, and the particle units. You can speed up your particle units by using certain light symbol codes. Now you can also invent machines that will direct specific frequencies, and if we knew how, we could invent machines that would direct specific D4 frequencies. Because you see, to access our crystal body, you can't do it from D3. You have to do it from the dimensional frequency bands above. That gets the chelons to open to accept a new program of operation. So when we use light symbol codes with our mind, that light is directing D4 sound. Right, just like when we have sound here, all right, our sound is actually D2 light. It appears as light in the second dimension. All right. So when